Hi there. Welcome to another episode of Slowing Down with the Scriptures. I'm Chris Matley. You may notice that I'm wearing a brand new flannel shirt. This is a gift for Father's Day from Patagonia. It's from my wife and kids. The gift is. It's made by Patagonia. Although if anyone is listening from Patagonia, the company, you make an excellent shirt, and you can contact me at chris@discoverhope.church about sponsorship. I wanted to talk to you about something else, though, which is a verse that you have probably heard before from the Scriptures. This is from 1 Timothy chapter 6, and you've probably heard it this way: money is the root of all evil. In fact, when we look at the original text, that's not quite what it says. It says this, it says, "For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil." So in the original text, when we look at what was actually said there, money or wealth is not the evil necessarily, and by contrast, poverty is not necessarily a virtue. In fact, money here is a kind of a neutral actor, an amoral force. That term, love of money, is one of several words in Greek that Paul uses in this verse that don't appear anywhere else in the Scriptures. That may be important, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but this particular phrase, love of money, that we translate into English, is a single Greek word, philarguria. Philarguria. The literal translation of this word, philarguria, is silver-loving. Silver-loving. But colloquially, at the time, meant greedy, a greedy, stalking pursuit of wealth as a means of gaining power. Now the term, like I said, only appears in this one verse, but it does appear in other extra-biblical writings. That is to say, Greek histories and narratives of the time, particularly talking about a man named Alexander the Great. You've probably heard of Alexander the Great. More than 100 years before Paul was writing this here, he lived and died and conquered much of Europe and the Mediterranean and North Africa. And besides bringing the dominance of Hellenistic culture, he also conquered and subjugated countless people groups and nations. So Paul may have been appealing to this well-known political figure to give us an example of what it looks like when a person is consumed or gives themselves completely to the egomaniacal pursuit of power. So let's look at the whole passage to see what Paul is contrasting this philarguria against. This is 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 6 through 10. It says this: "But godliness with contentment is great gain." That's a beautiful sentence there. I'm going to read it again, actually. "But godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it." That is true, isn't it? We bring nothing into this life, and then we spend this life gathering things. But when we leave it all behind. "But if we have food and clothing," he goes on to say, "we will be content with that." There's that word content, or contentment again. "Those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap, and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Some people eager for money have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs." That word griefs there is sometimes translated as sorrows or traumas. So Paul is kind of telling us here that the end result of this pursuit of greed, this giving oneself over to the pursuit of power and wealth, only ends in sorrow. I think also Paul is showing Timothy, because he's writing this letter to his friend and his disciple, Timothy. He's showing Timothy how to build a life that is balanced and mentally healthy. Much of that health hangs on that concept, though, of contentment. That word contentment, I'm going to give you one more Greek word. And it's this word contentment. We translate into English contentment, but the original Greek is autarkia. It means a contented mind, a perfect condition of life in which nothing else is required. Have you ever just sat under a tree on a warm summer day and fully inhabited the moment that you were living in? Have you ever simply laid aside the burden of tomorrow and planted both feet firmly in the now? Have you ever thought to yourself, I have everything I need right now in this moment? That's the contentment that he's talking about. There's a U2 song where Bono, the singer, gives this benediction. He says, "As you entered this life, I pray you depart with a wrinkled face and a brand new heart." You know, Paul says that this philarguria, this pursuit of things, is a root. But there's another root. These are the words of Jesus. This is straight from Revelation chapter 22. This is the very end of the book, the end of Revelation, the end of the Bible, the culmination of all the things that God has spoken to his people. And Jesus says this. He says, I am the root. I am the root and the offspring of David and the bright morning star. Jesus is giving us a picture here that he was there at the beginning, he'll be there at the end, and he's been present all along the way. That imagery of a bright morning star is everything that is beautiful and wonderful and pleasant and fulfilling about creation, about the things that God has surrounded us with. He's in all of those things. He can be the root. But to be the root, we have to dig up and dig out some of these other roots that have taken root in the soil of our heart. He goes on to say this, let the one who is thirsty come. Listen to this invitation he's offering. And it's for everyone. It's not, let the handful that I've chosen, let the select few that I let in. He says, let anyone, the one who is thirsty, come. And let the one who wishes take the free gift of the water of life. That's amazing. He's offering it to us free, the best part of life, and he offers it free. In this redistribution of resource, greed then becomes irrelevant. There's a measure of soul-quenching life to be found in relationship with your Creator, but all else leads to death. You know, we were talking earlier about Alexander the Great, who, in my estimation, is actually not so great. He was kind of a terrible guy. But you know, he ended his life at the young age of 32. He died under mysterious circumstances, far from home, somewhere in Persia, on one of his long campaigns of subjugation. And at the end, he died miserable and alone, and he took nothing with him. The Declaration of Independence includes this phrase when listing the inalienable rights that we have as citizens of the United States. It says, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, I'm a big fan of the first two. Life and liberty, freedom are good things. But I wonder if perhaps we should consider vacating the treadmill that is that third right, the pursuit of happiness. Think about that, the pursuit of happiness. It sounds exhausting, doesn't it? To pursue happiness, some fleeting thing. But in fact, people all around us do that all the time. That's what people are doing all the time. The rat race, we call it, right? People are pursuing happiness, pursuing wealth, pursuing things, pursuing bigger and better places to live, better cars to drive, better circumstance for their families. May I suggest instead that we pursue him, that we pursue Jesus. Let him inhabit you, and in turn, you can inhabit every moment that he gives you in him. This is his promise to us. that if we abide in him, he will abide in us. That's better than all the money in the world. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next time.